Nemesis just seemed to be all over the place with a plot that was very broken, and it was just not liked by so many people, not to mention the fact that there was like a 4-year gap between Insurrection and Nemesis. But if this movie had not failed, what do you think would have come next for the Next Generation crew? To me, this just felt like an ending to the film franchise for the Next Generation crew. The crew had broken up, Data had died, and yet an article came out recently talking about future plans for the Next Generation crew, and the article talks about something I just find kind of ridiculous. Okay, so this article that I'm about to read to you comes from Screen Rant, and it proposes the idea that they had come up with something during the making of Nemesis, a Justice League style movie that would take place after Nemesis. And to me, this seems so ridiculous. Star Trek's Justice League wouldn't save the TNG movies. A proposed superhero team-up movie would have followed Star Trek Nemesis, but it was too late to save the TNG movie franchise from its fate. Come on, seriously. This is what they're proposing here. An idea team-up. Maybe Kirk, Picard, and even Archer teaming up to save the day from some Star Trek legendary arch villains. This is their idea of what a movie would be. And they're boasting about how it was original, it was fresh, and that it would have been something unique and brand new because Justice League, the Avengers, all that had never been put to film. So they were on board saying, yes, this was going to be great. I love how they try and spin this. Not even a Justice League of Starfleet's best and brightest could have saved the Star Trek The Next Generation movies from their fate. The TNG movies came to an end with Star Trek Nemesis, which was critically panned and performed poorly at the box office. Had Nemesis performed beyond the studio's expectations, however, it wouldn't have been the last TNG crew's Star Trek movie. Brent Spiner and John Logan, who worked together on the story for Nemesis with Rick Berman, had started working on the fifth TNG movie that was described as Star Trek's Justice League. Doesn't this seem a little ridiculous? The Justice League? I know the Justice League didn't exist back when Nemesis came out, or rather the movies, but it just seems like they're trying to sell something here that I don't think anyone was going to buy. Now, I'm sure they would have worked out some of the other issues, but right now, the way this is being presented, to me, this is a major problem. John Logan and Brent Spiner's Star Trek Nemesis sequel would have seen Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, travel through the Star Trek timeline, assembling a team to combat the combined threat of some of Star Trek's greatest villains. Describing the basic plot of the movie to TrekWeb in 2006 magazine, Spiner said that their planned story would feature Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner, Spock, Leonard Nimoy, Jonathan Archer, Scott Bakula. However, the only Star Trek Next Generation characters mentioned in Spiner's pitch were Picard and Lieutenant Commander Data, which feels like a slight against the... They pushed them aside, is really what it was. Now, let's stop for a minute and talk about this. Okay, let's talk about our villains for a moment. The supervillains that would unite against Picard, Kirk, and whoever else they may decide to unite, go back in time to bring to the future. We got a Justice League unite, right? Ricardo Montalban, by that time, would have been around 82 years old and in a wheelchair because of injury that happened to him. So obviously they would have had to find someone else to do Khan, and I just don't see that happening. As for the Next Generation, the Borg Queen is the most deadly adversary that they've ever had to deal with. The article continues by talking about how Kirk and Spock have already been with Picard. Picard and Spock were in Unification, TNG episode Unification, and of course Star Trek Generations with Picard and Kirk. And the question is whether or not the fans would really want to follow this idea. It just doesn't seem like something that is workable, especially when, as I said before, when you consider Ricardo Montalban's age, and they would have to have found someone else to take his place, and would fans have accepted this new Khan? After all, when Star Trek Into Darkness came out a couple of years later, it wasn't received well by a lot of fans. Honestly, from my personal opinion on all this, I think Sisko would have been a good lead role for this type of a movie. Personally, Sisko needs to get a little more credit than what he does. Picard is great, but Sisko, I think, would have been a better man for this type of story that they're talking about here. Janeway, Janeway, Kirk, even Archer would be great. I just can't, they're trying so hard to put Picard as an action hero. And I did a video a while ago where I told how much they were trying to spin Picard into that type of role, and he's not that character. He's just not. And I just don't see this working with Picard as a lead. Again, Sisko. Yes, Sisko would be great in this. Well, I'd love your opinions on this. You know, time travel is an issue, of course, but blending these characters together, the historical characters, the villains, the good guys, I don't know how that would play out and what type of story that could honestly be. Khan is always a great character to work around with, but it's got to be the right person who can do Khan the right way. And what happened in Into Darkness was not good for me. It was just a complete ripoff of the Wrath of Khan. Tell me your thoughts, your comments. Do you think this is a good idea? Bad idea? I read that they're talking about this as a possibility for maybe somewhere down the line. But there's all sorts of rumors out there about what's going on with Star Trek. But that's a video for another time. Again, drop your comments below and let me know. Until the next time, my friends, God bless.